there, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Dancing Johari, and well, if you've been following this charm series I've been doing, you'll know that we still have one sister missing. That would be Paige. Of course, there's still a lot to do for this doll. So, shall we get started? To the workstation! Welcome to my project box. Inside lurks another doll in need of desperate makeover. This is a Torelei doll from the G1 Monster High series. And as you can see, she's been very well played with. She has really badly matted hair, so let's start with taking that off, along with her ears. Oops. I didn't intend to do it that way, but oh well. Now, I'm going to do it the right way with an X-Acto knife. Maybe I could still use them for a different project later on. I went ahead and kept trimming down the hair until it's nice and short. Now time for a little dip in some boiling water. This helps soften up the vinyl. I feel bad for Torelei right now, but she'll feel much better when we're done. 3, 2, almost. 3, 2, there we go. Yay, no issues this time. Huzzah! And well, I lost some footage, so I took out all the hair using some pliers, and I finished shortening the ears. Unfortunately, that left some holes that we'll have to deal with later. First things first, let's take off the factory paint for her scalp, which I've already done for her face, but let's use some pure acetone to take the stuff off her scalp too. Next, she needs some human ears. And well, we have some holes that we're going to have to plug up. Now, you could use moldable plastic pellets for some of this, but I'm going to use Apoxy Sculpt. I kept the moldable pellets just in case. First, let's start with the ears. So first, I put a pin in to make a hole. Next, I'm using these gold-plated jewelry wire bits that have like almost a nail head on the end. These are great for just using as a little bit of armature. I was out of my usual jewelry wire. So first, I shoved it in. Shoved. Oh dear. There we go. Now I'm going to twist it on the inside to make sure it stays in nice and secure. And this shortens up the wire to just the right amount. At least it did for this side. That's one. Now trying to match a placement on the other side, I stick a pin in the other side. Poor Torelei, she probably feels like a voodoo doll right now. Don't worry, you'll feel much better when we're done. And you'll be completely human. Won't that be fun? Finally, I got the second wire in after several tries, twisted it, and it still ended up a little longer than the other side. Don't worry, we'll take care of that later. First, let's mix up some Epoxy Sculpt. We don't need a huge amount for this doll, just enough to make some ear shapes. So we're going to start by squishing on some clay and making a vaguely ear shape out of the clay. Do the same on the other side. And next I'm going to take my sculpting tool here. This is one I used to use for cake decorating, but I've retired it. I don't decorate cakes as much as I used to. But I do have another tool set for it anyway. I bought a second tool set, so I use this one for normal sculpting now. And as you can see, that little bit of wire that's just a little bit extra, well, we're going to have to take a minute and trim that off. There we go. I trimmed it off camera with my wire clippers. Now I gotta redo what I had done, so I take my little tool and I'm going to make a little recess that'll make like a vague ear shape, and then I'll just continue working with the outside and give it a little piercing dot in case I decide to put in earrings later. Now we're going to use the rest of the epoxy clay to plug up the holes on her head. See? Didn't take much. I did mix up a little bit more, and well, I gave her a boob job. Yes, she needed it. Paige was pretty well endowed. Next, we're going to paint the scalp black with some acrylic paint from my modeling paints. And this stuff is great. It dries fairly flat. You don't see a whole lot of brush strokes normally. So it's great for miniatures. Also great for doll customizing. Think of a Vallejo glossy black. Once that's all dry and I've coated the black with Galaxy glue and let that dry, it's time to address her hair. But first, I'm looking at the ears and they tend to rotate a little. I'm also very worried about the plugs that I put in. They might pop out as I root. In fact, as you can see, they are already starting to. I went ahead and did around those areas first, just so I could mark them off. And for this, I'm using ink black standard nylon from the Dollplanet. And yes, it's straight, but that's because we're going with straight hair. Once I get around where the ears used to be done, I go ahead and use twisty ties, or you can use rubber bands. I recommend rubber bands to tie them off. Then I completed the rooting process. There's a part and everything looks pretty well filled in. But before I can glue everything inside, we need to plug up those holes, otherwise the glue may leak out and cause a problem. So, first, I matched the shapes back to where I had, back to the plug. The plug shapes back to where I had them before. Then using a little bit of jewelry glue, I glue them in place. This is a fairly fast process and it dries fairly quickly, although it takes a full 24 hours to fully cure. Okay. Once those are both done, we're going to just leave that to dry for overnight. It's the next morning and it's time for Galaxy glue. Let's get those plugs secured in place. So I go ahead and put a good amount in. And then take a brush and I squish it around to make sure all the plugs are coated. I also recommend cleaning up afterwards. It seems like I always get a little bit of glue just on the neck ring, just on the outside of it. Oops. Then I put that aside to dry, again overnight. Once it's fully dry, I put the head back on the body because we're going to airbrush her and we're going to want to do that as a full body process. You don't want to airbrush something and then put it back on afterwards. Now these ears are still moving a lot and I haven't dealt with them yet. So let's just put a little dab of glue behind the cured clay to hold them in place. That'll keep them from going anywhere else. Just be careful not to get it on the hair. Give it a little squish once that's done and then put her aside again to dry for another 24 hours. This poor doll, there was a lot of sitting and waiting for me to get back to her. The next day, I go ahead and mask off her hairline with a bit of spare cloth, and I hung her up in my airbrushing station. Using my airbrush, I primed her body, and I used 2 coats of white. We want to cover as much of that orange as we can. We don't want the orange color bleeding through, so to speak, and we definitely don't want those stripes showing. Once that was all dry, I took out my Vallejo Air skin tone and I began airbrushing her again. Since I fixed this airbrush for the last doll, I was so very, very pleased. And I'm very glad I got the skin tone back in stock. Totally works. Also, it's the same skin tone I used on Prue, if you're wondering. Once she was fully dry and had a couple coats of Mr. Super Clear, it's time to blush. And, well, we'll also begin her face up while we're at it. So using some various tones of pinks, I went ahead and began blushing her body. And her head. I admit it, I did her head and her face at the same time. Wanted to make sure those cheekbones popped. And of course we got to work on her lips. Wow, she's already looking more human. This is great. Now Paige, if you're wondering, is the youngest sister of the Charm series. She came in at season 4 after Prue had passed away. Meaning that the producers had decided to change things up. I'm not going to address the drama that apparently was on the set, but that's when Rose McGowan joined the cast. And she made a very great Paige. I really did enjoy her work. Using cream mica powder, I went ahead and blushed over her eyes for her eyeshadow. And keep a kneaded eraser handy for mistakes. Using a reddish brown watercolor pencil, I went ahead and sketched out the shape of her eyes. I want to make sure I had this really had what I planned firmly in mind before I started in with the bolder colors. Once I was pleased with it, I went ahead and started in with some light brown, tannish brown, I guess. Actually, it's almost like a mustard yellow, isn't it? And then I started sketching out her eyeliner with the blacks and sketched in some lines over her eyes and sketched in her lower lashes. Her upper lashes are going to be 3D lashes again. Of course, as I'm doing this, I'm also referencing a photo of Rose McGowan off camera as Paige. So this way I had a good reference nearby to peek at as I was working. So here's my question for you guys. What is your favorite part of the doll customizing process? Is it the face-up? Is it the clothes? What's your favorite? Seriously, is it the rooting? For me, it's always the face-up. I guess you could tell because I tend to put more footage of that and then of much else, I guess. But it's because some of the things are really tedious. I went ahead and darkened her eyes with a dark brown and then whitened the whites. And I just kept working on building up color as best as I could. Once it ceases to build up color, it's time for another coat of Mr. Super Clear. I decided that the cream wasn't popping as much as I would like, so I gave her a little bit of bronze mica powder for the eyeshadow as well. And it really worked. It came out to looking like a blended eyeshadow. There we go. And then I went ahead and carefully sketched in her eyebrows. Her eyebrows are the 90s eyebrows, which is the same kind of eyebrows I currently have. I haven't changed my style in that regard. We did very thin looking eyebrows back then. Very delicate looking ones. That was a style. For me, that's still my style. I just like my eyebrows that way. Then I took out a pink watercolor pencil. I guess the pink wasn't just enough at that point. I wanted it to be a little bit darker. And I filled in her lips a bit more. After another coat of Mr. Super Clear, I went back in with my pencils again. And well, the white is building up a little bit better. Not a lot, but some. But I'm also being very careful here because of the fact that I'm working on a painted surface. I don't want to scrape anything off by mistake. And well, before I attempted the brown, I just decided it was just time for gouache. There we go. Gotta love the pop that gouache paints gives you really quickly. I think it was a day that the kids were home, John was home, and I was just wanting to get this part of the project done, but I was still enjoying it. I was letting my muse flow. I went in with a light brown again, thinking maybe I could paint in the detail a little bit differently this time. And then I went in with the darker colors. Now, if this wasn't supposed to look like a specific person, I totally would have gone with my muse and left it. In fact, the next time I do brown eyes, I I might try to do it for an original character so I can do just exactly what I started to do with this doll. Because it was looking really cool. Also, at this time, I was also waiting for a new pair of glasses to arrive. I kept putting off the face up a lot, trying to wait out the period that my glasses would arrive. Unfortunately, they didn't arrive until yesterday. Which is the day I started editing this video. Took a little longer for them to get back to me this time. Normally it only takes a week. Now see, I took the darker colors and carefully painted in details. And I really should have just left them like this. They looked really cool in retrospect. Regrets! Oh well, time to get back to work. So I started in on the eyeliner and carefully sketching that out with the gouache paints now. I gave her some colored in her lower lashes a little bit more, and they're so delicate looking. Yeah, I should have totally left her eyes just like that. Darn it. But, well, they didn't quite match the actress, so I filled them all in with dark, and then I gave them a little bit of highlights with the lighter paint over the dark, and that gave me the effect that I wanted for the doll. It still looks good, but, you know. Now I know for my next time I do a brown-eyed doll, which is probably not going to be for a while, to do it the way I was doing it. Once I was happy with the way both eyes looked, I went on to finish the eyeliner on the other side. And I got a little bit blackened out, right? So we're going to cover that little dot up as best I can. There we go. Once that was dry, I added a little bit of red watercolor pencil to the corners of the eyes, give them a little more dimension. And, well, that pink isn't pink enough. Let's give her some gouache paint, too. Right on those beautiful lips. She did wear very bright lipsticks, and I really love that about her character, too. The fact that she was so bright. She was like a little butterfly coming out of the chrysalis and just blossoming in front of everybody. I tried to give her a smile, but, you know, I'm not sure if it came across as a smile. Darkened her nostrils as carefully as I could. And gave her some highlights over her lip. Anyway, and well, if you watched or are a fan of the Charm series, what was your favorite character and why? Please leave a comment in the comments below. I also added some gray just up at the top of her eye, and then I used some white to give her various highlights over parts of her face, including over the folds of her eye, in the corners, both above and below. And then finally, I added her catch lights. Once that was all dry and she'd had a couple coats of Mr. Super Clear, it's time to break out some glue. I wanted to add a little sparkle to those lips too, so I added some cherry mica powder. I think it added just enough. And then I gave her a coat of liquitex gloss varnish over both eyes and left that to dry again. Once she was fully dry, I removed the pins. And I cut through the yarn I used to hang her by from her hair burrito. And revealed her hair at last. Okay, her hairline we're going to have to address like we did the other dolls. But that's usual when you, at least for me, when I go to change a doll's skin color. So, using more black and my fine brushes, keep in mind this is acrylic black, so I won't have to go back over later. I went ahead and added some little baby hairs. First thicker ones, and then the even thinner ones. There we go. Afterwards, I gave all of the dolls a mani, and in the case of Phoebe and Paige, they both got a petty too. Once that's dry, it's time to take some boiling water again. But this time, it's to tame that hair. It was sticking up every which way. And you can see the reference I'm using. I was using a Blu-ray throughout this process for the dolls, which had all 3 actresses on it, so it was very convenient. Afterwards, I went ahead and brushed out her hair and gave her a trim. I decided not to go terribly short. I decided to give her, semi-decently long hair. Afterwards, it's time to take care of her clothes. So while her hair dries, I went ahead and made her up a pair of leggings using Delightful's pattern for the G1 dolls. First, we're going to cut out, I used a pair of leggings that I'm not ever going to wear, that I bought specifically just for the fabric for using for these dolls. It looks like faux leather. She looks like leather. It's really amazing stuff. So first I cut, folded them in half, did the inner seams, turned them right side out, and then I sewed up the crotch seam. Once that was nice and secured, I trimmed the thread and put them on the doll. Wow, those fit just right. She looks great in them. Let's make her a shirt. I decided to make her a spaghetti strap top. I took a pattern that had the neckline that I wanted and I altered it, leaving out the sleeves, of course. And then for the spaghetti straps, I used these bits of elastic, and then since I didn't have black, I just colored them with Sharpie, and it worked. After they were dry, I sewed them onto shortened them and sewed them onto the shirt, and they look fine. Next, let's address her shoes. To add a bit of color to her outfit, I'm going to put it on her shoes this time. And only on her shoes this time. Since these are butterflies, I wanted to bring out those butterfly wing details, so I started with a little bit of color first in all the little patches where color is supposed to show. Then I painted the shoes themselves black. Put those aside to dry. Then I came back and I painted all of the little tiny lines around all those patches of color. This took a while because you had to do the front side, the back side of each wing, and down the surface of the side of each wing. It took me about, I would say, an hour and a half to do these shoes in total, maybe 2 hours. But they really have a lot of detail. If you want a pair of shoes like this for your doll, go to Lady Dynamite Creates store on Etsy. She has some really good shoes, and this comes in a 3-pack of specialty shoes that she created for Monster High G1 shoes. She also has a similar pair available for G3 dolls, so you never know. I highly recommend her shoes. They are 3D printed resin, and they are literally works of art. I mean, look at that. Look at all that detail. That was what she did with her sculpting. I just brought it out with paint. After that was all dry, I gave all the colored bits a pop of shifting color with some dragonfly glaze. This will add a little bit of shine, but also give it a teeny bit of color shift. Finally, it's time for her 3D lashes. Once those were all glued on and had dried a bit, I trimmed them down. And she's done. Introducing Paige. I want to thank you all for coming and watching Paige's creation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. It's so great to see all the sisters together. What will you create today? Stay safe, stay tuned. Bye.